Hello and welcome to the Winner Circle community. I'm your host, Dr. Sean Hubbard. We're getting together once again to continue the conversation on how you can win and how we can win together. Each week we have an exciting guest on who cares a lot about what's going on in our society and who also has expertise in helping us to discover victory in an area that's important to us. Today I'm very excited to have my guest Al Cini. He is all about helping teams win, and who couldn't use more team wins? Al Cini, thank you so much for joining in the Winner Circle.
What a pleasure having you, Sean, if I may.
Please, yes.
A real pleasure being on the program.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thanks for coming. Yes. So Al is a friend, and we work together. We both host shows here on RVN TV, so it's wonderful. We have different areas of expertise, but there's a lot of overlap.
There's a lot of overlap. There's every area of expertise overlaps in one thing, and we'll get into that.
Excellent. So you help teams win. The brand and culture alignment toolkit is what you're all about. And first, before we get too deep into that, can you share, how did you get there? What inspired you to start
What started all this?
Yeah,
that's a great question, Sean. I really appreciate you asking. I went to graduate school, and I have a background in social psychology. So dynamics of groups have always been an interest. And later it became a kind of a serious academic interest. But I'm not a psychologist. I've never really practiced or worked as a psychologist. I went to school for it. What I was for a long time was a project manager. So my job, in fact, I was a project manager on a contract for NBC Universal. So I worked in New York for about 15 years at Rockefeller Center. And my job was to convert the TV stations that NBC owns and operates from an analog model of broadcasting to digital. You might remember when your TV set stopped working and you had to get a new one.
That's right.
Well, all that was about changing the way we deliver television, the way we deliver media to homes. And the interesting thing to me anyway about a project manager is that you really don't get to tell people. My job on a serial basis was to get between, let's say, 70 and 130 people to want to do something. I mean, they all had jobs already, and they were all busy, and they were all getting paid, and they really didn't need to do this from their point of view. But the network needed this done. And over a couple of years, my job was one station after another to inspire 80 to 100 people to want to do something that hadn't been done before.
Wow.
And that's why they kept me around. I sort of had a gift for that. And everything about what I'm doing today is based on what I learned from that and what I learned as a kid in South Philadelphia. I grew up in South Philadelphia. I'm a baby boomer, so I was on a street in South Philly that had 1,000 other baby boomers on it. There were tons of us. That's why they called it boomers.
Yeah.
And kids normally in a setting like that will play with a couple of neighbors, and that'll be that.
Right.
So 80 or 90 kids on the street. I had this gift for getting them all to want to play stickball or football or baseball. Now, I was no good at any of those sports, but I was great at getting the kids all together, all the kids on the street, to play one thing.
Sure.
And afterward, when they chose up sides, they didn't pick me because I was no good. But my gift was getting them to want to play in the first place.
How about that?
And that really is leadership. I mean, the essence of leadership isn't to tell people what to do. The essence of leadership is to inspire people to do the right thing because you do the right thing yourself.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
So everything about BCAT is based on those fundamental principles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm imagining, as I was thinking about your coming, I might stop over at Chick-fil-A and get a little. Get some nuggets and get some Jack Dandy. No, they don't sell that there, do they?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll usually stop at Taco Bell. If I'm going to get crappy food, I'll get it at Taco Bell.
I hear you. And so I'm coming through the drive-through, and I noticed that everybody's happy there. And Chick-fil-A, they have a nice culture. And so how do you go about creating that kind of performance and that kind of culture? How do you do what you
create a positive culture the same way an oyster grows a pearl. You start with an irritant, something that changes things. It's not you. It's an idea often. It's a concept. It's something that matters to you.
Right.
You kind of plant that, and over a period of time, and usually very rapidly, surprisingly quickly, a pearl forms around that irritant, if that makes any sense at all.
Okay.
You're not going to create a never in the history of mankind has telling somebody to calm down or lighten up
doesn't work.
Ever calmed them down or lighten them up.
Doesn't work.
Right? So you can't just tell your employees, be happy. We need to be happy. This is a happy place.
Right.
You can say that over and over again, but the more you say that, the more you're telling people something that you want them to do. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that Peter Senge's quote, wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline, a great book.
Yes.
People don't resist change, they resist being changed. People are willing to change, they're happy to change, they love the idea of changing as long as it's their idea. So and I hate to say it's a trick, but it isn't a trick. The magic of it is to get it to be, if Chick-fil-A has a positive culture, it's because they articulate happiness of their customer to everybody in a way that inspires them to deliver that happiness every day in every job. If that's where the positive culture comes from. If you don't have a positive culture, everybody's got a culture. Every organization has a culture. You're going to get one.
Definitely.
The question is it going to be the randomly grown culture around individuals working in silos?
Right.
Meaning that's the best you're ever going to get. Or is it going to be a common shared culture that people feel proud to participate in? If you can build the latter, you become a winner. And you win without even knowing you're winning. It just sort of happens. People want to come back to you. They recommend you. They suggest you to their relatives. You can't lose.
Right.
At that point, winning is a guaranteed success. There's no way that you can lose.
Interesting. So I thought I'd ask you about a couple of winners. Let's say this past season, the Crimson Tide won the college football playoff. And I noticed after each year, the teams will say, oh, we were planning on getting here the whole season, the whole team, rather, the whole year, rather.
Right.
But if you listen to them after each game, they just say, oh, we're just focusing on the next team. We're just focusing on the next team, next week,
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you reconcile that?
It's a funny thing. There always has to be some kind of a strategy.
Yes.
Really. I'm not a sports person. I mentioned in South Philadelphia, I couldn't play baseball or football. It was not me. But I loved watching people play it. Even the kids knew that there had to be a strategy. So if it's baseball and you got to get somebody on base, the next trick is to get them off base further along so that finally they score a run. There needs to be a playbook, whatever game you're playing, there will always be rules that govern your behavior. There have to be that. Those are things that you follow, and that's the process part of it. But the other part of it is the motivation part of it.
Right.
And that often for a winning team is the miracle that makes the difference. I'm thinking about winning hockey and beating the Russians in 1980. I'm thinking about, it's hockey. We all understand how that game is played. We know it's a puck and we know it's we know how to move that puck around on the ice.
Right.
But on that day, at that moment, a real underdog team came through. Nobody expected that. Probably they didn't expect that.
Right.
You get those wins because everybody decides that they're committed to not just the win, but what you get as a result of that win. And that's how you create winning isn't always just about competing successfully against another team.
Sure.
Often it's just competing against yourself, making you a better version tomorrow than you were today of yourself.
Right.
And that's all culture. That's where that all comes from. So if the Crimson Tide won, and I don't know anything about football, if they won, a big part of it was the fact that they really wanted to.
Yes.
They knew how, they had a playbook, but they really wanted it. And they wanted it not just for themselves, but for everybody else that they felt they serve. That's their purpose. The whole point of what we do is to try to connect people with the purpose that defines winning for them.
Sure. And another team that seems to be really tremendous at this is Apple. There are several where the employees are happy to be there and the consumers are happy to get their products, right?
Well,
Apple and Amazon and Zappos. These are the winners. How are they doing it at Apple? What's your sense of what's at play? Because I guess what I'm asking also is how do you keep score, and what would a playbook look like?
In the case of Apple,
yes.
I can tell you because they were a client. I worked with them in the 90s for about 5 years.
Yes.
In the case of Apple, I can tell you, when I was there, by the way, they were not the winning team that they are today.
Okay.
When I was there, they were a struggling second or third tier computer technology company. They had the iPhone. They were certainly deeply entrenched in digital technology, but they really weren't technology was somewhere else. It wasn't at Apple at that
Yes.
time. But there was a lot of excitement and a lot of energy at Apple. And so people who went to work at Apple knew in Cupertino when they woke up in the morning exactly what that meant. In the car as they were driving to work, stuck in traffic most of the time.
Right.
They were thinking about what was expected of them. They got into work maybe a half an hour, an hour early. They didn't leave work until maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night. They went home to shower and shave
Wow.
and clean up and maybe grab a sandwich, and then they came back the next day.
Incredible.
They weren't exactly sure what it was that they were trying to accomplish, but they were going to accomplish it one way or another. They were determined to make that work. I mean,
Wow.
that's if there's anything I remember about the time I was working at Apple, it was that we don't know whether this is going to work or not.
Right.
But we love doing it so much, we're going to keep doing it every day, one way or another. We're going to succeed. We're not exactly sure how, we're not exactly sure when, but we
Wow.
are going to make a difference. And they all felt that. Everybody that I worked with at that company felt that. I also worked for a bunch of other companies. I worked
Yes.
for a company, I don't know if you've ever heard of Digital Equipment Corporation.
I haven't.
Well, let me tell you something. At one point, they were the second largest computer company in the world.
Wow.
Way larger than
Okay.
Apple. Huge by comparison. They were assured to become the powerhouse computing company. Their president was on the cover of Fortune magazine.
Wow.
Never heard of them, right?
Never heard of them.
They're gone now.
Oh my goodness.
Because at Digital, and I worked there too, at Digital, people sort of came in. They spent 80% of their day talking about who was going to get laid off next. Because they were going through it, they were contracting even then.
Sure.
So 80% of their conversation was about getting laid off, surviving the next cut. If they
Can't
the
win
people-
like that,
In
basically.
an 8-hour day, the people at Apple work 12.
Right. Wow.
12 hours.
Sure.
In an 8-hour day, the people at Digital work 3.
Amazing.
And that was it, and it was all culture. Every bit of it
goodness.
was culture. So you can almost tell, being in both those environments, which one was going to win and which one was going
Wow.
to lose ultimately. And that's ultimately how it turned out. Nobody ever would have predicted 20 years ago that Digital would be gone and Apple would be the big player.
No kidding.
Nobody ever would have predicted that.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So BCAT then helps teams understand what their culture is or create their culture.
It's I try not to use the words, but the words do come up. We don't define brand and culture the way everybody else does.
Okay.
Brand is how you look when you're doing your work. So what you're known for, what people, not what you say necessarily, or not what you tell them you're doing, it's what they see when you come to work. So if you're in a hospital, for example, and you're seeing patients,
Yes.
what patients will feel from your presence
Yes.
is competence, comfort, a sense of hope,
Yes.
optimism.
Right.
These are things that you need to communicate to a patient to help them in their journey to become healthier.
Yes.
That's what you have to do.
Got it.
If you're a team member of SEAL Team 6 or the Girl Scouts,
Right.
your goal is a little different. Your objective is a little different, but helping people feel what that is what we do. And the brand is, how do I have to present at work in order to meet my goals, whatever they are.
Right.
And culture is, what motivates me to do that? Culture is the shared pattern of motivation, pride. Shared pride, not personal pride.
Right.
The shared pride that we all get from working together on this team, because being a member of this team is more important to us than anything.
I see.
So at Apple, it's not about who's going to be the best player. It's about how are we going to help this team win. At Digital, it was always about who's going to be the best player. It was always about the personal win.
Oh, I see.
And over a period of time,
Internal competition, basically.
essentially internal pointless competition led to ridiculous arguments.
People are working against each other. actually.
All the time. And in fact, sometimes we used to call that don't diligence. Everybody always talks about due diligence.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
don't diligence are the silly ritualistic behaviors that we engage in that are intended to slow everybody else down so that we can move ahead of them.
My goodness.
Most of the time it's unconscious. In a positive culture, that doesn't happen. In a negative culture, that's all you've got.
Sure. Oh my goodness. So then brand then is behavior.
Behavior, which you say, which is 20% of what people know about you.
Okay.
80% is how do you treat them? How do you...
What you convey.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a lot of it.
Okay. And culture is collective.
Culture is the collective
we-
motivation,
Okay.
the reason why I behave that
Motivation.
way. So what we do with the brand and culture alignment technique, the toolkit, it's a process. We start by helping a group of people decide. It actually works like this. We start by helping a group of people choose the role model that represents their collective best self on their best day. So we start with this. Let's say we've got and I know you're a doctor.
So
and
now, a group of people will choose.
Yeah, it's more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nah.
All right. Okay. Let's.
Yeah. Okay. So
I wonder if we can follow up on this. We'll take a break there.
we'll do that.
And,
When we come
I
back,
really
I'll
want to
explain the whole process.
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. That'll be great because I
Great.
need this process actually. I happen to be involved in teams at work, and we want to improve our processes, improve our patient satisfaction scores, and so we need this information. When we come back, I'm
When
going
we
to
come
get the
back, I'll
details.
give you a do-it-yourself.
Okay.
My marketing guy is going to hate that, but I'll tell you how to do it without us.
Okay. All right. We'll
Okay,
look
cool.
forward. We'll
Thanks,
join
Sean.
you in a few minutes after this break.
Cool.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to the Winner's Circle. I'm your host, Dr. Sean, here, and I'm joined by my guest, wonderful Al Cini. He's helping us to understand how we can achieve our best selves with regard teams, our best team's performance. And, Al, let me just tell you that as a practicing physician, and probably most practicing physicians, when we develop, we want to be our best selves.
Sure.
And then we go through a growth process and we realize that it's not all about us. It
never was
It
about
never
you.
was.
It just, you suddenly realize that.
That's right.
Yeah,
Sooner or
that's
later,
true.
we realize that when I'm not here, there's somebody else. There's a nurse, there's the dietary department, physical therapy's here, so many other team players.
And every one of those teams has a North Star that
Sure.
represents their purpose.
Yes.
And it was a conversation we were having during the break.
Yes.
Most people who solve the culture problem
Yes.
solve it by going to the executive suite
Yes.
and talking with the CEO and doing a couple of exercises and doing some work with the CEO and maybe their executive leadership team.
Okay.
And when that's all over, the people that actually deliver the healthcare services
Yes.
hear that those meetings took place,
Yes.
but never learn anything about what came out of them, and none of that has ever rolled down to them.
Right.
So unless what you're doing actually changes in a positive way,
Yes.
the people who mop the floors and answer the phones, then you might not as well have done any of it because it really didn't do you any good.
Right.
So it's really, really fundamentally simple. You take any group of people that have a common purpose. For whatever reason you assembled this team, it might be a project team that's building something temporary, a year or two, and then they're done. It could be a service delivery team, like a nursing unit. It could be an administrative team. Take a group of people that have something to do in common, and you ask them this question. Here's where my marketing guy is going to want to shoot me. I'm giving this away. Think of this whole team as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day to keep all of its promises and achieve all of its goals. So instead of thinking about yourself, I never say that, by the way, just focus on the team. Think of this whole team as though we're a person. Imagine that your surgical team is somebody you can meet at a party.
Right.
What would they be like?
So we are one. Imagine we are.
Imagine we really are just
basically.
one person.
Yes.
Because when we incorporate a team,
Right.
and we call this question the incorporating question.
Yes.
When we're incorporated, we're creating an entity.
Yes.
So but now that we have this entity created,
Right.
what would that entity be like if I met it at a party or if I
Right.
encountered it in a restaurant?
Right.
What would they be wearing? Well, how would they be talking? What would that person be like?
Sure.
It's a completely different way of thinking, so it takes a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
When that's over, we have an instrument, a survey that we ask people to complete. If there are 30 or 40 people in the team, they each complete the survey, and what we get back from that are 30 or 40 different personality profiles.
Wow.
Of course. Who do I think we are when we're doing our best work in the
right.
So I get all these different data points on a map, and I show it back to everybody and say, okay, now, some of you thought we were this,
Right.
but a bunch of you thought we were that.
Right.
Where are those perspectives coming from, and who are we really when we're doing our best work on our best day? Right. Because we never touch the third rail of change, because we never tell people they're wrong.
Right.
Because we never judge anybody.
Sure.
Because we never tell anybody what the answer is. We always get them, we facilitate them through this.
Right.
Because they always come up with the answers.
Yes.
We get terrifically positive results in a very short period of time.
Wow.
Also because that question
Yes.
is accessible to anybody, whether you started yesterday or you've been here for 25 years. You know, and that inclusiveness really, for us anyway, and a very important concept. It's
Yes.
inclusiveness in defining our shared purpose. What is it we're here for? And then when we've got that, what are the 2 or 3 things about that role model, this person that we've just created and agreed to?
Right.
What are the two or three things about that person that we could emulate every day in order to become better versions of ourselves?
So you have this idea of a person that is really high performing and doing a wonderful job. And now that might be, is that going to be the same as the leadership teams?
Never.
Yeah, right?
I'm glad you were, when you've got this role model,
Yeah.
this who are we when we're doing our best work on our best day.
Right.
When you've got that role model articulated,
Yeah.
whether you are the owner of the hospital,
Yes.
or the leader of the team,
Yes.
or somebody who just answers the phones for the team,
Right.
you all have an equal place at the table around becoming a better version of you.
Wow.
And that role model is your path forward.
Sure.
So a leader would look at that role model and say, you know, there are 2 or 3 things about myself I think I can change.
Okay.
I think I have a tendency to judge people in front of others. You know,
Okay.
when I feel an emotion, I tend to react to it.
Right.
What I need to do is become more mindful of how I feel
Yes.
to become a better leader, more like our role model. And somebody who answers the phone maybe will say, you know, our role model wouldn't let it ring 35 times before she picked it up. Our role model would pick it up on the first or second ring. I'd drop what I was doing and do that.
Sure.
What you get back from that are a list of 2 or 3 things that everybody says they'll change.
Right.
It's got to be observable behavior. Things that you can watch me do so
Right.
that you can confirm for me that I'm actually getting it done. And you get a crowdsourced personal improvement plan system out of it, where everybody just says, yeah, there are 2 or 3 things about this role model that could make me a better version of me. But because one of the things we know, and we know this from history, is that people really don't buy from you or come to work for you for the product or for the service that you offer. They buy from you and they come to work for you because they believe that'll make them a better version of themselves. So in healthcare, the patient choice is about becoming that comforted, healthy version of themselves that they believe they can become by coming to work, by buying from you, by selecting you as a healthcare provider. If you're also wrapped around that same data point,
Right.
meaning if you're thinking the same thing and delivering it,
Right.
then your job is to make sure that that patient gets the better version of themselves that you're offering by becoming that better version of yourself that you need to be to deliver that.
Right.
And excellence comes from everyone, not just from one person.
Yes.
So I can tell you too, working in project management,
Yes.
bringing it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
If you've got 85 people that are going to be working on a project and you want to
Right.
get that project done faster
Yes.
for less money,
Right.
you can either do it the old way, which is 8 of those 85 people are going to do 90% of the work.
Right.
You know, and the other 75 are just going to sit around and watch.
Oh, sure.
Or you can try to increase that percentage from 10 to 40 or 50%.
Sure.
You're never going to get 100% buy-in.
Right.
But you can't just settle for 2%
No,
buy-in.
no.
And that's what most people get all the time. You're just trying to change the odds. When you do that, things get done faster, and they get done for less money. And when it's over, there's a party, and people feel like they made it happen.
There's a reason to celebrate.
They
Yeah.
celebrate that, and they celebrate each other. And when they get together in a room, they talk about what everybody else did, not just what they did.
Right.
You know?
So a big initial part is getting everybody focused on a
Think about your whole team as though we're a single person. And think about that. If you're SEAL Team 6 or
Yeah.
a 5th grade class,
Yeah.
the way you answer that question will be radically different.
yes.
But it's your purpose that we're not Apple's purpose. It's not
Right.
about Steve Jobs was never anybody's role model, ever.
No.
Okay, Steve
Right.
Jobs, what people followed about Steve Jobs was
Right.
people don't follow people, they follow what people follow. Steve Jobs was the ultimate advocate for the happiness and success that you feel when you buy an Apple product. Not a pleasant person himself.
Right.
But he had a really clear picture in his mind of the person he wanted to help people become with the products he offered.
Remarkable.
That's what everybody bought into at Apple. They didn't want to be like Steve.
Right.
They wanted to be like that role model that Steve wanted to be like every day. And that's where all the great products came from.
Interesting. Interesting. You know, it seems sometimes easier for certain companies to find that ideal, and I don't want to create problems, but you know, let's say you have Southwest Airlines.
Sure, yeah, oh yeah.
But there's a clear idea of, okay, here's where we are,
Yeah.
and here's where we want to go.
Sure.
This would be winning, you
Yeah,
know,
sure.
and this would be scoring.
Right.
But if you have something, let's say like healthcare, sometimes people come, they do want to be better versions of themselves, but sometimes here's a broken leg, here's a broken hip, here's a heart attack.
Sure.
You know, and we might be focused on helping them get better from where they were, you know. And then there's some people that are focused on, oh, we got to clean these arteries out. You know, everybody has all of these different ideas.
And those different ideas have value. And, you know, I do want to, what we often call brand and culture alignment is this
Sure.
creation of a North Star that the organization follows.
Yes.
But people don't navigate by just one star. I mean, if you are into sailing at all, you need, if you're going to do celestial navigation, if you're going to be the kind of courageous sailor
Yeah.
that actually goes out far enough
Yeah.
that they can't see the shore anymore,
Wow, yeah.
and if you really want to know where you are when you're out on the open ocean, then you're
Right.
going to need more than one star to chart by.
Sure.
So in a hospital, there will be a North Star for Virtua, the corporation.
Right.
There will be a North Star for a particular hospital, let's say a pediatric hospital.
Right.
That's a little different from, you know, a teaching hospital,
Sure.
let's say. You know, there will be a North Star for that hospital. And then within your department, there will be a North Star for the emergency room.
Right.
That's pretty different from the North Star for a convalescent facility.
How about that?
If that makes sense. And so what you want to do is, in our mind, the perfect situation is you go to anybody, anywhere in Virtua, and they have hanging on their wall a star that represents Virtua, who they are, who Virtua is when it's doing its best work on its best day, a star that represents their profession, what is it they went to school to learn how to do,
Right.
and a star that represents the team that they serve. Those three stars become my three role models that I follow in order to become a better doctor, a better member of this facility, and a better contributor to the mission of Virtua.
How about that?
And that's what we try to articulate for people. Then it's fun work. People really enjoy thinking this way. They
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
People really do want to be selfless.
Yeah.
But without a purpose,
Right.
all they can do is
Right.
really just sort of look at themselves and say, what am I getting out of this? But you really have to switch. The conversation has to shift from who am I? Right, which is the first
Yeah.
the first question.
Yeah.
Who are you? Which is the second question. Can I trust you?
Right.
The question nobody ever bothers to ask is the who are we
Who are
question.
we? Yes.
And the answer to that question is where all the magic is.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
I like it, and it makes sense. A ton of
It's
sense.
a simple process to follow, and it doesn't take, once you know how to do it, it doesn't take long at all to do it, and it's fun.
So the first step is short. You said like a couple hours, or
That question,
you know.
15 minutes.
Okay, 15
But
minutes.
we ask that question, who are we when we're doing our best work on our best day?
Right.
With the product, the service that we offer.
Sure.
We have an online survey that you take that takes 15 minutes.
Okay.
What we get back from that is a personality profile.
Okay.
Then there's a 1-hour meeting with the leaders. This is what everybody thinks. You're the leadership team. Who do you believe we ought to be? That identifies a gap.
Okay.
We have a common sense of what our purpose is,
Yes.
but now we've got a mindful sense of what we believe it ought to be.
Right.
Now we've got to close that gap, and we
Yes.
close that gap by becoming more like that role model and giving up this collective role model that we've created for ourselves. Becoming less like us individually and more
Right.
like the we that we're supposed to be.
And how long does that generally take? Is it months?
Couple hours.
Or what about the cultural change that has to happen?
Maybe a month or two.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you get immediate results.
So
It's
immediate
amazing when
results.
people learn by emulating role models.
Right.
The cool thing about this, Dr. Sean, is it's based on everything we know in psychology.
Yes.
You can, if mission statements worked, I mean, because they have more, if they really worked, then everybody
Right.
would have one on their birth certificate.
Right.
But we know they don't work. I mean, the truth
Right.
is we know you can't just publish a document that says this is what we're about
Right.
and expect people to read it and follow it.
Sure.
A mission statement is something you have to feel, not something you have to know.
Right.
You climb the Crimson Tide.
Yes.
If you're going to win as a football team or a baseball team, if you're going to win at all,
Yes.
you got to feel that win.
Right.
You can't just know the moves you got to make.
No, you're right.
You know, you really have to feel it. When you feel it, then all of a sudden, the moves become less important. You're going to get there in those moments, those instants where you're supposed to fake left, but they're ready for that.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, you got to step off the playbook and do something different than what the playbook said. In those instants, what really matters is that you feel what it's going to take to win this game. So then all of a sudden, you just move off the playbook and you start doing what really needs to be done.
There you go.
You know, and that's and the coach is happy about that.
Right.
The playbook is a guideline; it's not a law.
Right.
So you know, you have to know how to break that law, and you have to want to.
Sure.
And empowering people is really kind of the key to this.
Excellent, excellent. Wow, so now I'm sure that people will hear this and they'll want to get your insight. And how can they work with you? How do they find you?
It's I have my email address is al.cini, al.cini at getbcat, getbcat.com. And we have a toll-free number, 855-999-BCAT.
Excellent.
So easy to get.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing. I look forward to finding
Sean,
out how
what a
we can
pleasure.
get our teams to winning more and discovering more of who we want to be and who we say we are.
And it's fun to do that. I mean, you know, I not to brag, but we have a net promoter score of 10.
Yes.
So everybody we've ever worked with has said they found it to be a valuable experience that they enjoyed and
Yes.
that they appreciated. Not just the bosses, but the people who actually work in the field and do the work every day.
Wonderful.
For a lot of them, it was the first opportunity they had to express what they really wanted in their lives.
How about that?
So getting everybody included in the process is a big part of it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and thanks for coming. And
Thanks for
your
inviting
generosity
me.
is incredible. Thank you so much for you watching this program. And I've learned a lot. I'm sure that you have also. You can look forward to following us more for insights like this every Monday at 2 o'clock p.m. and every Tuesday at 6 o'clock p.m. right here at RVN TV. We look forward to seeing you next week at this time. Take care, guys. Until then, keep winning.